10 a.m. every Wednesday on WSTU AM 1450 and Facebook Live at The Casey Ingram Show.
Are you tired of searching endlessly for the perfect contractor to get that renovation or repair done? Introducing TreasureCoastElite.com, the website where you can find reliable, licensed, and insured contractors for all your home improvement needs. Whether it's a trustworthy roofer, efficient electrician, reliable handyman, or more, TreasureCoastElite.com offers an extensive list of top-quality contractors locally on the Treasure Coast. Wave goodbye to hours of stressful guessing. Visit TreasureCoastElite.com. You'll find the best experts at roofing, concrete work, AC service, you name it, TreasureCoastElite.com has got you covered. So homeowners, what are you waiting for? Treasure Coast Elite is just a few clicks away. Visit TreasureCoastElite.com today and get that home improvement project done now with the help of the finest contractors only on TreasureCoastElite.com. Give them a call, 772-247-3355, and they will connect you with the most reliable contractors on TreasureCoastElite.com.
You are listening to WSTU, Stewart, Jupiter, and Indiantown, Martin County's Heritage Station.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, welcome back to the second half of the show, folks. Today I just wanted to be in the studio myself and really let's talk about us, ladies. There's been a lot of things that are happening on the political front, and I think on both sides of the aisle, where I feel like women's rights are truly being attacked. And I thought today, let's just get on here. Let's talk about everything that's going on in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And, we all have some just choices to make, and we all need to decide what we're going to do about it. So specifically what I'm referring to is the abortion ban that was just passed in Florida. It's 6-week abortion ban. And effectively, folks, and it's not just that on the Democratic side, we have men, transgender men that are competing in women's sports. We have, men that can compete in our beauty pageants. How does this affect women? How does this affect our scholarships? There's just so many things going on. I guess this show is probably going to upset people on both sides of the aisle. And I can tell you that I have been a lifelong Republican since I was 18, and I'm very passionate about this. And there's always one issue that there's maybe 2 or 3 issues in political parties that you look at to say, okay, I don't agree with everything, but on these main issues, I can agree with. And one thing with the Republican Party that I've always disagreed with is their stance on abortion, that women do not have the right to make those decisions for themselves. We're unable to determine our own destiny. I've always disagreed with that. However, I've always agreed with a limit on the time limit of abortions, and I thought 15 weeks here in Florida was just fine. That's my own personal view. But this abortion bill that DeSantis just signed and was passed through the Senate and the House, I think really intrudes on women's rights. And I wanted to talk about that today. And I'll just highlight a little bit about the bill. It'll go into effect. Right now, the court is deciding whether or not to uphold the state's 15-week abortion ban because it was challenged last year. Once that is decided, then this new legislation will take effect 30 days after that ruling. But the law differs a little bit from the 15-week abortion ban in that they did make exceptions for the cases of rape, incest, or human trafficking for up to 15 weeks of pregnancy. However, individuals must present a restraining order, police report, or medical record to get an abortion. The legislation also blocks doctors from prescribing abortion pills through telehealth and sending them via mail. 6 weeks is too short of a time for most people to find out if they're pregnant, folks. That's really the way I look at this is just a full-out ban on abortions because 6 weeks is very short. And, it's unlikely that somebody's going to be able to even obtain the 2 state mandated OBGYN appointments with such a strict time frame. If you think about it, a woman's on a monthly cycle, she has 2 more weeks, and in those 2 weeks she has to decide, oh my gosh, am I pregnant? I'm just late. I mean, a lot of things can happen. A lot of us won't even know we're pregnant at that early stage. And beyond that, the appointments have to be at least 24 hours apart. And with the 6-week ban, it makes it virtually impossible to get the doctor's appointment, let alone 2. And that's really how a lot of women feel. Under the Florida statutes, the 6-week abortion period begins from the last person's menstrual period. So in reality, you sort of have 2 weeks from your missed period. And that's really what this is about. I have a lot of feelings about this, folks. And please join in the conversation. I'm watching here on Facebook for comments. And ladies, I really encourage you to join in on the show because this is really about our rights. Roe v. Wade was passed in 1960. And when it comes to the Republican Party, it's one thing I didn't agree with, but because it was passed decided on at the Supreme Court of the United States, I felt confident that women would always have a choice. We'd be able to choose our own destiny, choose what's best for our body. And this overturning of Roe v. Wade was a huge disappointment for me, and I think it was for a lot of women as well. I wish that the Republican Party had just let it be. This was a decision that was made with the Supreme Court of the United States, and because of the minority of people here in the United States, this was overturned. And I know that those of you that are anti-abortion celebrate it, but I want to go into some statistics here and some numbers here, folks, because not the majority of people agree with an abortion ban. From the Pew Research Center, Public Opinion on Abortion, it was published in May of last year. And with that, 61% general public say that abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and just 37% said it should be illegal. So, 61% of people in our nation believe it should be legal. When you go by religious affiliations, 3/4 of white evangelical Protestants, 74% think that it should be illegal in all or most cases. However, by contrast, 84% of religious unaffiliated Americans say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. 84% of religiously unaffiliated Americans say abortion should be legal in all or most cases, as do 66% of black Protestants, 60% of white Protestants who are not evangelical, and 56% of Catholics. 56% of Catholics. These figures are a little surprising when you look at them, that and this is why it's so disappointing to me, is the minority is really dictating to what the majority of the country wants. And again, folks, my own view, I couldn't get an abortion myself. I'm so grateful that I have a child, and I couldn't imagine life without her. But at the same token, this is my body, my rights. And Republicans have always said, well, we're here, less government's good, except when it comes to a female and a woman's body. She's the one that has to decide what's best for her. She's the one that has to live with whatever decision she makes. And, I credit God. He gave us all the ability to think critically. And yet people are also using religion to say, no, God said life begins at conception. It doesn't begin when the child is viable or any other point. And that's just, it's everybody's opinion. And I think that in this case, the 6-week abortion ban is definitely taking the minority view that life begins at conception. And no matter what you think, there is another person who's deeply involved, and that is the mother. And this, in my opinion, folks, 100% should be between her partner, her doctor, and her God, whoever she believes in. It's a very personal decision. It never should have been political in the first place, if you ask me. I go on with this Pew Research, the views on abortion by gender. The majorities of both men and women express support for legal abortion, though women are more likely than men to hold the view, 63% to 58%. That's, again, the majority on both sides. By race, 3/4 of Asians, 74%. 68% of black adults, and in most cases 60% of Hispanic adults and 59% of adults support legal abortion. And adults by age, if you're under the age of 30, 74% said abortion should be legal in most cases. 62% of adults in their 30s or 40s. Those in the early 50s and 60s, 55%. And then over 65, it goes to 54%. Again, it's a majority right across the board. And then this one I thought was really interesting. And we have a caller on the phone, but before I go to that, views on abortion by level of education. 2/3 of college graduates, 66%, say abortion should be legal in all or most cases, as do 63% with some college education. Among those with a high school degree or less education, 54% said abortion should be legal in all or most cases, while 44% said it should be illegal in all or most cases. So, folks, across the board, the majority of people feel like women should have a choice. Women should be able to decide for themselves. And, we're going to talk about some of the arguments here that people say, for example, a woman can just give it up for adoption. We'll talk about that a little bit because it's easier said than done, and women have a lot to consider there as well. But first, I'd like to go on to the phone. Bob, are you there?
Bob, this is Casey. This is Smiling Bob from Palm City.
Hi, Smiling Bob.
I'm just absolutely jumping out of my skin over here. Casey, men should not be in this conversation. They have no way to know how that woman feels, what's going on inside her, or what's going to happen to her future. They should stay out of the narrative and let the women decide. They have no right to stand there and peddle consequences that they have no responsibility for. So there's my piece, and good luck with it. I cannot agree more with you, Casey. Thanks. Keep up the good work. We're listening. We're all listening.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I couldn't agree with you more. Again, this is something that we women have to deal with, and in every aspect of it. The man, matter of fact, a lot of them can just walk off and leave her. And you talk about, there's so many different issues here, folks. And Daniel McDonough, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your comments. And yes, I am using my voice on this topic. Something I didn't mention at the beginning of the hour, I talked about Republicans and Democrats and what are we going to do about this, because I feel like we're being attacked from both sides. Folks, I have, for the first time in my life, I'm now registered as a NPA, no party affiliation. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I've always preached you've got to vote for the right candidate and the best candidate, and don't just vote with an R or D behind the name. But I needed to send a signal to my Republican Party that you decided that 6 weeks and to take a woman's decision, her right, away. You don't allow her to control her own destiny. You don't allow her to control her own body. That's not, to me, less government. That's the most intrusive kind of government you could make. And you've done that to me, Republican Party. So I'm disappointed. There's a lot of things I agree with you with, but this is one I can no longer register as a Republican. So, this type of legislation, the far-right Republicans that support an abortion ban, you still have them, and you had them before. But you've lost people like me. And, folks, I can tell you with certainty, you would be surprised how many women feel like I do, but are afraid to speak out about it or can't speak out about it because of the party line they may hold. I know that me coming out and saying this, it means I will never, ever hold an office because it would be held against me, probably on both sides in some degree. So it's just, as women, we fought so hard for our rights. And folks, women fought so hard in the 1960s for Roe v. Wade. And, nobody seems to care about the women that are desperate, that for whatever reason decide they don't want that baby. And now we're condemning her, and nobody cares about her if she has to be relegated to a coat hanger like she did at one time. We're back to those days, and it breaks my heart. Everybody talks about just put it up for adoption. So let's talk about that for a second. Is every child wanted now? I looked those statistics up, and for all you that say just put it up for adoption, have you adopted? I'd like to know that, because if that's your fallback on what every woman should do, if you haven't adopted and you think that that's what every woman should do, have you went out and adopted? Because there's 440,000 children in foster care in the United States right now. 440,000 in foster care. Over 100,000 are waiting for adoption. Foster care is temporary. It is not a permanent family for these kids. Worldwide, there's an estimated 140 million orphans. Is every child wanted right now? If adoption is your solution, this is what women have to go through when they're trying to decide what happens when an unintended pregnancy happens. What's going to become of that baby? And again, I totally agree with a time limit. I don't agree with this being used as just birth control out there, but folks, things happen. And the other thing that's changed for women a lot is even when we marry. And, back in the 60s, women were about 20. Now they're approaching around 28 years old, 27 years old before they're married. As time goes on, we have careers. And when you have a baby, it really impacts what you can do in your career. It impacts what you do every day. It's so much different for a woman than it is a man. And I appreciate Bob calling in and saying that, because while I appreciate everybody's opinion, it's women's opinion that I feel hold a lot more weight in this particular issue, and I've never thought that it should have been a political issue to begin with. So that's just my opinion. And Jan Mazingo, I appreciate you tuning in. I'm sure there are many that feel this way, but when is the day we decide it's okay to take the baby or let it live? And, for me, Jan, that 15 weeks was fine. It gives a woman enough time to try and figure out use her critical thinking, what's best. And so to me, that 15 weeks is fine. And I know there's other people that are going to argue it should be more than that or less than that. And there's always going to be exceptions, in my opinion, as well. First of all, the woman's health needs to come first. And you also said, families waiting right now, and there are so many children out there. They're probably, I don't know why they're waiting. Maybe they're waiting for the perfect baby, a certain, gender, certain race. I don't know what the deal is, but there's a lot of kids out there that are in foster care that don't have families. It's not always a child is not always adopted. Maybe it came from a drug-addicted mother. Maybe there's some, something that's just different with the baby. And maybe it has a handicap. I don't know what the different reasons are. All I know is not every baby gets adopted. So to sit there and just say that's the solution, I don't think it's a fair solution. And that's something that women do have to think about when they're in that position. And, here's another thing. It's not like the human race is on the brink of becoming extinct either. It's amazing. We have to think about our impact here on the world. So again, if a woman decides something in that first 15 weeks, I just feel that this is her personal decision. This is her life. She should be in control of what happens. In 1800, there was about 1 billion people in the world, and then in 2 billion in 1927, it took 123 years. Then in 1960, in 33 years, it went to 3 billion. And you do realize since 1950, the world population has tripled in 70 years, and now it's projected to be 8 billion in 2024. So, our human species, we need to think about all of this. And I'm not saying we need to put restrictions or anything like that on childbirth. And China has done that, by the way. But again, to sit there and say that every woman should have a baby, if she gets pregnant, whether it was by her choice or not, and to say that child at conception, you need to decide to keep it or put it up for adoption. It's really not a fair decision. And there are other things to take into consideration. Jan, you just said, several families waiting for any baby, and they can be difficult to get. What about the older children that at some point or another, nobody ever wanted them? I mean, 440,000 children. Can we do more education and prevention to eliminate? Yes. Jan, yes. 100%. I am all for more education, and that's the best case scenario, is not to have that pregnancy happen in the first place, right? But it does happen, and then we have to decide what to do. Amy Pritchett, critical thinking includes abstinence. That's definitely goes along with what Jan said, maybe education. But in today's world, as I spoke about marriages, late, ages, do you really think that's commonplace or where people are today? Do you really think that that's a woman who's waiting till she's 27 or 28 and a man who's waiting till he's 30? We all know how kids and their hormones are and all this. If you think that abstinence is a viable option, that's really good, but is that a likely scenario in today's world? And I argue, no, that's not a likely scenario, and it's great if it happens, but it's not a likely scenario. Jan, where does God come into all this? And let's talk a little bit about that. Major religious groups. If you can put up slide 1, these groups oppose abortion rights with few or no exceptions, and that's the African Methodist, Episcopal Church, Assemblies of God, Roman Catholic Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Hinduism, Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod, and the Southern Baptist Convention. IGGY number 2, these religions support abortion rights with some limits. The Episcopal Church, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and the United Methodist Church. IGGY, if you can put up 3, these religions support abortion rights with few or no limits. Conservative Judaism, Presbyterian Church USA, Reformed Judaism, Unitarian Universalist, and United Church of Christ. And then finally, IGGY number 4, these religions do not have a clear position. That's Islam, Buddhism, National Baptist Convention, Orthodox Judaism. This came from the Pew Research Center, and I put this up because, Jan, it does come from religion. These are religious views and religious opinions, and depending on what religion you are is your belief. So I'm asking you, if somebody is a different religion, they may have a different belief on abortion, and that's where, again, it should be up to the individual person, herself, her God, and her partner and her doctor. So that's where you have to decide. Is there a divine order? Again, Jan, you and I have our own religious beliefs, but that's not the beliefs of every person in this world. And there are so many different religions that even within the Catholic Church, 56% of the people, if I read at the beginning here, believe that there should be some sort of abortion rights. So even within religions that, for example, the Catholics don't even believe in the birth control. So it comes down to a woman's rights. And you can argue religion with me all day long, and I will say to you, with your religion, then that's your right. But not everybody is your religion. And that's where this country, I don't think it should be a political issue. I don't think that this should have infiltrated them. Your church should teach your fellowship the moralities and the life that they should live. But at the end of the day, every woman should be able to decide for herself. And if her religious bringing tells her that, boy, time is flying by. If her religious upbringing tells her that she needs to have abstinence and she gets pregnant, something went wrong there. But then it says, keep the baby or give it up for adoption, then that's up to her. I don't understand how another person can tell another woman what she has to do with her body. And, I've seen some crude comments about women who get pregnant and, tough, it's their own fault. They shouldn't have engaged in relations. And they're stated more cruelly than that. But we all know, folks, that's just not necessarily what happens with these issues when people engage in these relations. There's decisions that are made that are badly, and sometimes mistakes happen. Mistake meaning something happens overnight. A boy and the girl get together when they didn't intend to. But I'll also say this: if you condemn that woman for getting pregnant out of wedlock, are you the first person here that also says you don't have any sin, you never make mistakes? Sometimes we all do things that we shouldn't have. And this is one of those things we have to deal with. And again, women have come such a long way. And I can't get to all your comments, Jan, but I do appreciate them. But women have come a long way. We are now no longer the housewife that the husband goes to work and takes care of us and we take care of the family. It's a different world. That world is gone. It's extinct, in my opinion. Women are out there in the workforce. We're out getting educations. We're thinking for ourselves, and we have our own careers. We contribute drastically and have really since World War II to the economics of our society. And with that, it may mean that she can't carry a baby to term. She may decide not to, for whatever reason. And again, I'm not saying that this means she's running out and using this as birth control, but things happen, and she should be able to make that decision. That fetus is unsustainable, especially in the first 15 weeks of life, without her. And at the end of the day, it really should be up to that woman. I'm not even going to get to the second half of my conversation, which was about the attack of women from the left, and that is Iggy, real quick, if you can just put up figure number 5. I mean, we have men that are competing in beauty pageants. How is this possible, women? I mean, anybody can put on eyelash extensions, hair extensions, and put on makeup, and we look pretty darn good. But at the end of the day, if you, this is my opinion with the transgender issue, whether it's sports, beauty pageants, what have you, we need another whole category for that. Women should compete against women, men should compete against men, and if you're transgender, then there's another category for that. And that's just my opinion. I'd love to go into that further. Jan, thank you so much. And trust me, I wasn't supposed to have my daughter, and I did. And I understand what it's like to not have a child. I'm just saying there's a lot out there that weren't adopted, and we need to take that into account. I have just 30 seconds. It's not always a solution, and women have a lot on their mind. And again, I'm going to go back to the fact God gave us the ability to critically think, and we're critically thinking for our own body. And that's where I want to, I hope that as a society, that's where we leave it. Let women determine our own destiny. Thank you so much. We're going to have Shane Snavely in here next week, and we're going to be talking about the January 6th issue up on Capitol Hill. We'll see you then. Thanks so much.